Okay, this is simply a quick tutorial on how to bring in a part from SOLIDWORKS into Surfcam, a solid part file into Surfcam, and do the proper orientation and rotating and translating to have it sit properly on your mill table. So here we go. First thing we need to do is open up the solid part file, the SOLIDWORKS file. So we'll simply navigate to that location. And the next thing we got to make sure we do is change the file type. We need to change the file type to a SOLIDWORKS file, SLDPRT, solid part. And there's what we're looking for, WB04 ejector2.solid part. This is simply an ejector plate on a mold. I'm going to say open. And you'll notice this is the view we get. Not very informative, doesn't really tell you a whole lot, so the first thing I like to do is go to View and go Isometric View. That allows me to look at the model in an isometric view. And I'm going to shade this model for clarity. And you'll notice if I take my middle mouse wheel, depress it and move the mouse, rotate the model, you notice there's counterbores on the bottom side. So obviously, if I go back to my isometric view, this is how the mill is going to look at it, how it's placed in my vise, and that's not desirable. I need the counterbores up. Alright, so what do I need to do? Well, the first thing I need to do is I need to rotate this plate or flip it over, so to speak. So how are we going to do that? Well, the important thing to remember is that all rotation in Surfcam happens about the construction view, the C view, and this is your construction view. This is your ruled, okay? This is not your construction view. All rotation happens about this Z-axis. So if we were to leave this oriented like it is and rotate the model, we'd simply be spinning it like a top, and the counterbores would not reveal themselves. So what we need to do is we need to get this Z-axis to point into a direction such that when rotation occurs about it, the plate flips. So we go into C view, and I'm going to say I want my Z-axis to point to the right side. And you'll notice, okay, that the Z-axis is now pointing out to the right-hand side of the model. Okay, that was all done with this C view. Now we're ready to rotate it. So we simply go Transform, Move, Rotate. I'm going to turn Multi-Select on. When I turn Multi-Select on and I say move everything that's visible in my screen, I get an indicator, a visual indicator, everything that's going to move turns yellow. Okay, I'm done selecting what I want to rotate, and now I simply have to enter in a rotation angle. I'm going to enter in 180 degrees and say OK. And now it's asking you lower left hand corner, got to get used to reading that in Surfcam, select the point of rotation. I typically like to rotate about the keyboard coordinates X, Y, Z0, which is right here. That way I can keep track of the model. And you'll notice that sure enough, if I shade this model, my counterbores are now facing up. So I'm getting close. Now, in a machining center, a lot of times I like my longest axis of my part to be along the x-axis of my machine. So you can see here that the longest axis of my part, longest length edge of my part, is along the y. So we got a little more work to do. So again, rotation always occurs about the C view. I need to get the Z pointing in a direction so that when I rotate it, this plate just rotates like it's a top. So I need to put the C view back up to top. I want the Z-axis point towards the top. Okay, now that we've got that, I can easily visualize that when I rotate this plate about the Z-axis, it's simply going to spin. So now I'm going to do another transform, move, rotate. Make sure when you use visible, make sure the entire model is visible. If you're zoomed in like this and I hit visible, I'm going to lose some of this geometry and this geometry down here. Visible, done. It uses the right hand rule on rotation, so you stick your thumb in the positive Z direction, curl your fingers, okay? That's the direction it's going to rotate. I'm going to put it 90 degrees in and say OK. And again, lower left hand corner, select point of rotation. I like to rotate about keyboard 000. There we are. Now you'll notice that so far it looks pretty good. My long axis of my part, long edge of the part's along the x-axis, y-axis. The last thing I need to make sure is that this top of this plate is at Z0, because that's where I'm going to pick up my tools. Well, to do that, I'm going to turn off the surfaces. I don't need to see the surfaces right now, so I'm going to turn off the surfaces layer from visible to invisible. And I'm going to figure out, I'm going to do an analyze. I'm going to figure out where the edge of this plate is. So I'm going to go analyze, location, and endpoint. And I'm just going to find out where the endpoint of that plate is. And sure enough, it's at Z0. That's what we want. If I wanted to make sure, double check, I could go to the center point of this circle. And the center point of that circle is at x0, y0, z0. Okay, it's important because when I pick up this plate, it has a hole pre-machined in it, and that's where I'm going to pick up my X and Y 0. I'm going to sweep that in with an indicator, and Z0 is going to be the top of my part where I pick up my tools. So you can see that doing part rotation in Surfcam is fairly simple as long as you understand the C view's rotation and the Z axis. That's it for this tutorial.